Hi, on the Woodpecker today, I'm gonna make the last dresser of my bedroom set. I can finally replace the last dresser in our bedroom. So I can now begin the construction of the 9 drawers dresser. I apologize in advance. This episode will look a lot like my 6 drawers dresser. I start everything by picking up a bunch of old mahogany panels for the exterior of the dresser. I sand the big panels with the drum sander, and I roughly cut them to a more manageable size. I make one side straight and rip the rails and stiles. Since I'm preparing all my wood, I get some birch and I mill it to be able to do the web frame. I cut the rails and stiles to their length and do all the mortises of the mahogany pieces. I make a groove in the center of all rails and stiles for the raised panels and the plywood back. On the stiles, I route a stub groove. Still on the router table, I make a chamfer on the edges of the rails and stiles. On the stiles, I make sure that the chamfers are stopped well before the start of the rails. The back of the dresser is made from 2 plywood panels, so I'll need a mountain. I'm using the assembled back to figure its length and add the depth of both grooves. Then I cut the tenon at the end of the mountain. To find the exact size of both back panels, I find the center of the back frame and the center of the mountain. Then, I measure the size of both panels and cut them. Then I cut the raised panels for both sides. When they're cut, I route their raised profile. I begin with the end grain, rotate the panel, and do the other sides. I make the profile in several light passes. When the profile is done, I fill the holes with a lacquer stick. Then, I sand both panels up to 220 grit. I finish the sanding with the linear sander with a 220 grit also. The panels need to be pre-finished. I begin by cleaning them with alcohol. Then I wipe a coat of shellac. I need some domino holes on all the stiles, so I'll be able to assemble the back frame with both sides. After marking them, I make the mortises. I sand all the interiors of the rails and stiles. The sides are sanded with the linear sander. Now that the interior is sanded, with the help of my plan measurement, I mark the placement of the web frame mortises. Then, with all 4 stiles carefully aligned, I trace a line over the mark on all of them. Now I just need to use my jig and make all the mortises. Before going any further, I carve my name on the exterior of the top back rail. Now I can finally glue all the dresser exterior mahogany frames. I spread glue inside all the mortises and the dominoes. Here you can really see clearly the double mortises assembly on each corner of the frames. To keep the raised panels centered, I put some rubber barrels inside the grooves. Then I put the raised panel in the center and assemble the frame. The last thing I do is to put 2 clamps to hold everything together while the glue dries. I need to do the same thing for the big back frame, but on this one, I put the glue inside the grooves because the panels are in plywood. One corner needed some convincing to close perfectly. Since I don't have long clamps, I use my workbench as a clamp while the glue dries. I just need to put a clamp in the center to hold the mountain. When all the glue of the 3 frames is dry, I can dry assemble them together with only 2 dominoes on each side. I can now measure the exact size of the web frame. My plan shows 56.5, and so does the measuring tape. So now I can cut all the web frame stiles at 56.5. When they're cut, using 2 of them, I measure and cut the rails. Like I did for the exterior frame of the dresser, I make all the dominoes mortises. I route a groove for the dust panels. When all the pieces are done, I measure the panels and cut them. Before gluing the frames, I sand the panels. Then I can glue all the web frames. I'm gluing one of the top presently. It has 4 sections. This one is done that way to support the top row of drawers. The rest have just 2 sections. I had to use all my clamps to glue all the web frames at the same time. When the glue is dry, I sand the frames. Then I mark the center of the drawers separators. Then I make the separators mortises right through the frame, directly on the mark. I mark the placement of the web frame mortises, which will align with the one on the side stile I made earlier, and make them. Then I cut all the drawers vertical separators. After, I make a mortise in the center of each side of them. I make several 10mm mortises on the interior top of the exterior frame. I'll use those mortises to hold the top of the dresser later on. Finally, I can glue all the frames together. To do so, I'm using slow set epoxy glue, thickened with silica powder. I spread glue inside all the mortises of one side frame and on the dominoes. Then I spread glue inside the mortises of the top web frame, and with René's help, I put them together. Then I put the dominoes and the separator for the top web frame. Then it's time to put the second web frame. When the mortises of the frame and the separator align, I put a domino inside, but not all the way. I need a tenon for the next separator. Then I just need to repeat this for all the web frames. Then I glue the other side, the back, and clamp everything. By the way, I would have appreciated if the camera's battery hadn't died at the same time our house had a power outage. When the glue is dry, I clean the glue squeeze out inside the dresser. Then I can glue one side of the face frame. Everything fits perfectly thanks to the mortises I made earlier. Then I just clamp this and do the same thing on the other side. While the glue dries, I make the base of the dresser. I cut mahogany strip for the horizontal and vertical divider of the face frame. Then I mark the placement of the strip mortises and make them. This will help for the alignment later on. After putting the dresser on its back, I glue all the vertical face frame strips. When they're all in place, René helps me to put cowls so I can clamp the strips. When the glue is dry, we put the dresser up and I glue the vertical separator. Then it's time to cut birch runners for the drawers. I drill screw holes in the runners. I drill pilot holes inside the dresser and screw the runners. The pilot holes for the exterior runners are much more complicated to drill. I'm using an air ratchet to drill it. Now I can finish the chamfer on both side frames. I noticed that the back is so long that I need to screw a support in the center. So I cut 2 pieces of scrap. I drill 2 holes on the flat side to screw to the top web frame and 2 others to screw to the back of the top rail. Then I chamfer the holes. I just need to mark the placement of the pilot holes on the web frame and the rail, then drill them. When all the pilot holes are done, I screw the support. While the dresser is upside down on the floor, I place the base centered on the case and drill the pilot holes. Then I remove it and make a rough sanding, mostly to remove the pencil lines and the glue squeeze out. Then I stick the leg on the bottom of the base with double-sided carpet tape at ½ inch of the edge. I turn the base on its legs, measure and mark the placement of the legs' dominoes mortises, and do them. Dominoes will hold the legs in place later on. Before removing the legs, I label them somewhere which won't get sanded. Unfortunately, I made the cabinet maker's button mortises on the wrong back rail. So, with a drill and a chisel, I'm making new mortises. Now the top can be cut to its final dimensions. I'm having a hard time figuring which side will be the top. The back is pretty messy, so I decide to give the top a rough sanding. After I was able to see the small cracks and the small chunk of wood missing on the back side, so I decide to use the other side as the top visible side. But I still have to fill some holes with lacquer sticks. This is the price to pay if I want to use 100-year-old 20-inch wide countertop board. When all the holes are filled, I sand the top at 80 grit. Then the base and top receive their edge profiles. Now both of them can have their final sanding, up to 220 grit. Now I can cut the buttons, which will hold the top in its place on the case. It's pretty easy to make. I just cut a rabbet the thickness of the buttons mortises and rip them to the right width. When they're all cut, I can drill their screw holes and chamfer them. I just need to put the top on place and mark the screws pilot holes placement. With those marks, I drill the pilot holes. Now the dresser is almost finished. I sand the exterior up to 220 grit. When the sanding is finished, I route a cove on each side of a whiteboard for the top and bottom moldings, then I rip it. When I have enough moldings, I cut the moldings at their right length at 45 degrees and glue them to the case. To hold the moldings, I use headless pins. When the glue is dry, I sand the moldings. Then I hand sand all the sharp corners of the old dresser. It's time to clean everything for the finish. I start by vacuuming all the dust. Then I clean it with alcohol. Then I wipe a coat of shellac everywhere. The hard spots are brushed on. The rest is wiped with a t-shirt. I'll just put one coat of shellac for now. The snow outside prevents me from spraying the lacquer that I wanted to put as a top coat. Now that the dresser is covered with shellac, I can begin the assembly. I start by screwing the base to the case. Then the legs. I realized that 6 dominoes were too much, so I'm just using 3. Then with help, I put the dresser on its feet and screw the top. The dresser is finished, so we can bring it in our bedroom. Renee finds that this is a little too heavy for her. When it's finally in place, I remove the protective pad we've used and put all the drawers in. After 3.5 months, it's finally finished. It's not that bad considering I've used almost exclusively recycled wood for the whole thing. Thanks, and we'll see each other again on the next episode of the Woodpecker when I'll be making the dresser's drawers.